one more question. If we don't do a round of rebuttal after that, so we'll have 2 minutes, and I'll open it back up to the audience. Dr. Clyburn, if you do the honors, please.
Since most of you are against, of course, not President Obama, and I'm not sure of your position, but since most of you have wanted a repeal of Obamacare, the new health reform that is now up for debate, what health reform would you advise, if any, that goes to all candidates?
Since we began with Obama last time, we shall begin with Rocky Anderson this time.
Okay. Obamacare is only a partial step to true healthcare reform. It was corrupted by the interest of the medical industry and the prescription drug industry, and it was so watered down it's not really going to affect that much. We need to institute real healthcare reform like the one in Taiwan, which is the leading healthcare reform in the entire world. And Canada, whose healthcare program is continually the most popular program in Canada. And we need to better provide healthcare for almost all Americans and stop this bickering over private industries just making money out of people's problems and health problems, and they're dying every day because insurance companies won't pay for their health care.
Thank you very much. Ron Paul.
Healthcare in the United States is right now in an environment of corporatism. You have the big pharma, you have the big insurance companies, and now you have big government involved. So now you have 3 different huge entities, huge bureaucracies involved in an industry that should be about you and your doctor and your health. So the idea that your insurance should come with your employer, you get a job, you should get benefits, that's a fundamentally wrong way to look at this problem. If the issue is taking care of people and allowing them to have the best health care, which will enable them to live the longest and have the highest standard of living, then the relationship between the insurance companies and the individual need to be just that. You need to take away the employer-based coverage system. It just kind of grows into a corporatist system which benefits the wealthy on the backs of those people who are dying of cancer, other illnesses, can't afford treatment, they can't afford to pay for their kids, they can't afford any of this because it's so expensive. That does go back to the Federal Reserve in so many ways, but just to stay on this, because the inflating currencies, Obamacare, it puts in new kind of controls by creating insurance exchanges. And that way the government's approving a certain amount of plans, which then each state can offer to their people and so on and so forth, when it makes no sense. I mean, it's a free market system. The more competition we have, the lower the cost is going to get. Take an iPod, or the Apple, for example. You know, when Apple first came out, they were really, really expensive, or computers. They were really expensive. But as they became cheaper and cheaper and more available and easier to use, more people started to use them. And now you can even get prepaid stuff like this. So the point is that competition, it breeds success, it lowers costs, and it offers more prosperity to more people. So if our goal is to get people covered and to make sure that we take care of our citizenry, then we need to get rid of Obamacare, end the corporatist environment that healthcare exists in right now. We need to not have an individual mandate. We need to reshift the emphasis to individuals developing relationships with their doctors and their insurance companies.
Thank you very much. Mitt Romney.
When it comes down to it, we do agree we need to repeal Obamacare, and my plan actually mirrors that of the Ryan Wyden plan. Wyden plan, where we need to have some government option, but we also need a private government, or we also need a private option for citizens who are on Medicaid and Medicare to choose their coverage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romney. I'm sorry, Dr. Hayden.
No worries. The big government Obamacare approach does not address the root causes of America's health crisis. Instead, it creates layers of new taxes and regulations and bureaucracies which will ultimately make the problem worse. I propose that we increase patient power, and such a plan will save lives and money. The first thing we need to do is we need to make health insurance more affordable, and provided we can do this by giving Americans the choice of a generous tax credit or the ability to deduct the value of their health insurance up to a certain amount, and by allowing Americans to purchase insurance from across state lines, increasing the competition in the industry. We also need to create more choices in Medicare by giving seniors the option to choose on a voluntary basis a more personal system in a private sector with greater options and better care. This would again create price competition and increase competition in the market. We also should cover the sickest with the high-risk pool set up by each state to cover the uninsured who have become too sick to buy health insurance. This will cut costs in hospitals. We also, though, have to protect consumers by reinforcing laws which prohibit insurers from canceling or changing or charging discriminatory rates increases to those who become sick while insured. The Extend Health Savings Accounts, HSAs, throughout the healthcare system, which everyone on Medicare and Medicaid should be free to choose an HSA for their coverage. All workers should be free to choose an HSA in place of their employer coverage if they desire. We also must reward quality care by changing the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement models to take into account the quality of care being delivered and incentivizing the beneficiaries to seek out facilities that deliver the best care at the lowest costs.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. President.
With the passage of the historic Healthcare Reform Act, I believe that we are making positive strides in fact, reforming the healthcare industry that has been broken for so long in this country.
Well, thank you very much. And before we get on to our critic, I would like to just give a nice big round of applause. Thank you all very much. Dr. Clyburn, any remarks you have as our official critic here for the meeting?
Well, you all actually did an exceptional job of representing the respective candidates here, at least in my estimation. Each of you really captured the essence of the candidates in question, and you also captured their shortcomings and flaws in many respects, each of you. But no, I don't mean that as an adverse criticism. You all are exceptional performers here. You actually are better thespians and actors than politicians, I would say. Far better. Exceptional performers. But again, you all captured some of their flaws in many respects. The president, for example. The president has always had two major shortcomings in my estimation. One is that he can often be a bit too pedantic at times. That is, he, especially when it comes to detailing actual policy proposals, he can come across as more like a college professor than a candidate for a public office at times. He can often come across as more of a highbrow, and that may turn off a lot of voters out there. The president also doesn't tout his achievements enough, which was the major shortcoming this evening here, and it often is with the president. This is a man who's responsible for the elimination of Osama bin Laden, the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi, yes, briefly, the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi, signing some of the most stringent arms control agreements ever concluded with the Russian Federation. As far as national security goes, I can't think of any modern president who's done more, really, to enhance the national security of the United States. Mr. Gingrich, again, his policy positions so well articulated, but unfortunately, again, his past conduct and past behavior, and of course his hideous current life are major liabilities, no question about this. And Mr. Romney, your performance was stellar. I want to emphasize that, but it also makes it crystal clear that Mr. Romney is doomed. I dare say. I dare say the lack of substance, the lack of passion, is so evident that putting ideology, dogma, and party affiliation aside, this is a disaster for the Republican Party. It really is. Just putting ideology and party affiliation and anything aside, Mr. Romney is going to have to undergo a lobotomy or something in order for him to prevail. Again, the lack of substance and passion is so self-evident. Mr. Paul, again, a stellar performance here, and you wonder aloud why, as so many Mr. Paul supporters argue, why this candidate never seems to attract media attention. Because he does have the passion, the charisma, and the clearly delineated policy positions that you look for in a candidate, but obviously our mainstream media has no interest in giving him a forum. And again, the same could be said, of course, of our final candidate, not being given media attention, scrutiny, et cetera, et cetera. It's become quite evident to me just watching this performance here that our mainstream media does an abysmal job of informing the general public and creating this atmosphere of inevitability around a candidate that I think does a disservice to the voters and to the electorate. There's no question about that. Again, in 2008, the same thing happened with Senator Clinton that is happening with Mr. Romney now. From the beginning, the media depicted her as though she was the inevitable nominee of the Democratic Party, and Mr. Obama's candidacy came as a surprise to the press and to the pundits in many respects. Mr. Romney has the same atmosphere of inevitability, and the press has emphasized that all along, and it's done the public a great disservice, I fear, and saddled the GOP possibly with a candidate who simply is not viable, simply doesn't have the personality, the charisma, or the clearly delineated policy positions to win in the fall. It's not a matter of ideology or anything of this kind. The candidate has to have substance and passion, and Mr. Romney's lacking that. It's crystal clear. This young man captured the essence of the candidate in many respects. But aside from that, again, you all are stellar performers, that's for certain. No question about it. And the questions were certainly telling and profound also, something that often is lacking in our mainstream media also. Questions that are actually very profound, and yes, all the questions you all pose too are actually very burning ones that need to be addressed. How about you all? What have you all got to say about the candidates that you represented? What have you learned about these candidates and about American politics in general from your research into these individuals? No, any of you? Yeah, I'm just curious.
Well, this is why we need a third party, because both parties are just so in bed with corporations and other interests, and they're so corrupt, and the media just goes along with it, and everything's just so bad, and people just don't understand anything, and you know, the media just asks irrelevant questions, and the politicians go off on their talking points and don't really answer the question. And at least here today we answer the questions pretty much.
I've learned a lot about Ron Paul in my endeavors. I'm sure I've annoyed almost everybody on campus several times about it. But you know, what's going on with the Ron Paul movement right now is that people are disenfranchised. Obama promised them the world and didn't really. He delivered in some ways, yes, but he fell short in a lot of his promises, which many will say and agree with. And Romney is not. I mean, Romney doesn't excite anybody. He's just this politician who might have founded Obamacare. Like, you know, there's all this stuff there. And so Ron Paul offers this alternative that it's a complete. It really is a revolution. I mean, it's a complete upside down turn that we go from a top down to almost a bottom up society, which a lot of people, Democrats and very like what's their name? The Occupy people. I mean, if they educate themselves a little bit more, it'd be Occupy the Federal Reserve, because that's where it all is coming from. So it's really just giving me an idea and an opportunity to be part of changing something that's personally affected me, and you know, in some aspects. And also, I just see it affecting and hurting people that I'm around, whether they're my friends, acquaintances, or families. And just see that this isn't working, and we need to change stuff. And it's really cool that Ron Paul is kind of out there fighting the good fight.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything you said about Romney. While I had the questions beforehand, and I was able to look up his positions, and he was unable to find a clear response for a lot of them. And I think that was definitely shown tonight when some of the questions were asked and answered. And it's true, from day one he was the choice in the media, and you know, you had the flavors of the week with Bachmann and Gingrich a few times, and Santorum for a while, but they all just came back to Romney and sort of he's the guy we have to.
Bear in mind, I'm Romney, no ill will, and I'm not a supporter of any particular candidate of either party. It's just an empirical observation.
It comes down. He's there. Yeah, we don't like Obama, so it's what we have. Except Ron Paul. Ron Paul's there, but
it makes you wonder a lot about why other more prominent Republicans didn't seek the nomination. Why so many prominent Republican members of Congress, for example, did not seek the presidency this year? It's a very good question about why they were.
So to see Obama's policies fail and laugh at him and win in 2016. I mean, that's really, like, that's why I think Sarah's not in there. And that's why I think you have a lot of not, because I mean, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. I think Obama's, when you have candidates running on populist messages, the one who's in office is probably going to win. Obama. So.
Yes, maybe so. Sorry. How about yourself as far as what you learned, if anything, from him?
Well, I found it very interesting presenting the viewpoints of Newt Gingrich, because he touts a lot of achievements that some would question, such as he loves to mention how he was Speaker of the House and did all these very great things during his tenure as Speaker. However, he was relieved of the position due to ethics violations. And it fascinates me as well that he loves to tout his brilliance in the realm of foreign policy and how much duty to his country means to him. Yet, as we brought up, he was sort of a draft dodger. So, again, the hypocrisy of politics is somewhat amusing as always, and it was also just very interesting seeing a lot of the overlap between positions within the Republican primary.
No question, which demonstrates that there's an element of egomania involved in seeking an office of this stature and of this kind. He's not human. I think you have to be an egomaniac to some extent to believe that you're qualified to hold the most powerful office in the world. To some degree, you've got to be an egomaniac. And yourself?
I've always been an Obama supporter, and I knew what his positions were, and I knew how he stood on the issues that were submitted to us. It gave me a good opportunity to look and see his time in Chicago and in Illinois, what sort of shaped his view on the policies and why he stands for what he stands exactly, not necessarily just what he stands for.
Understood. No doubt about it. I think you all demonstrated something else too, that Romney's running mate, that's going to be a pivotal decision, I think, for him. Who will he select as his running mate? It's going to have to be someone charismatic, someone who's an eloquent speaker, someone who can clearly articulate a vision for the GOP this year. He needs to exercise extreme caution in selecting that running mate.
Really, that's a pretty interesting selection.
Yes.
Think about it. She's Indian and effective. She's conservative. She's
Christie will be So it's not likely that he's going to select any of his competitors this year. Highly unlikely.
Christie wouldn't be it. He's got too much of an ego himself.
No, yes, Christie's more likely to go into cardiac arrest. Quite frankly, so it's.
And again, people like straight
yes, he is. He's a very charismatic figure.
And with Romney especially, Romney has 0. She has 100. Maybe they kind of help medium then.
Santorum has yet to actually endorse Mr. Romney despite dropping out.
And they're all flocking around all delegates in the convention.
Yes. Yes.
The one problem he's going to have is finding someone who doesn't overpower him. He can't have, what happened to John McCain with Sarah Palin come in and completely overshadow his
You're right about
campaign.
that. So he's really in a dilemma there. You want someone charismatic, but not so charismatic they're going to, eclipse you in some way, shape, or form. That's an astute observation on your part. I also think that there's another consideration here, and that is that Mr. Paul and Mr. Gingrich may continue their campaigns even beyond. I think they definitely will.
What's very interesting right now is a lot of states have rules that bind their results. They bind their delegates based on the popular vote.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only for the first round of votes. So what happened after 2008? Ron Paul lost by a lot, but his organization remained in place. His people got involved and ran for councilman, ran for local office, chairman of local parties. Those are the people who become the delegates. Those are the people who are involved. So they are all right now pledged to Romney. But don't be surprised if it becomes brokered. Ron Paul comes out with like a 60 or 7% majority over Romney because they're all Ron Paul people there. I mean, very involved with the campaigns. And it'd be like, it upset the party, but also it's important to realize that if they don't take into account Ron Paul supporters and the 5 to 8 states he'll support, he'll be like, fine, I get 20% of the Republican vote, let's see what I can get of the Democratic vote, run third party. I don't know who that would hurt more because Ron Paul's so different.
Yeah.
But point is, he's a force to be reckoned with. He's an organization to be reckoned with. So, you know,
Mr. Paul has a lot of younger supporters. It could hurt. It could even hurt the Democratic candidate. It could hurt Mr. Obama's candidacy if that were to occur. It'll be interesting to see what concessions Mr. Romney is prepared to make to, say, Gingrich and to Mr. Paul to try to assuage them and to gain their endorsement. Yes, if that's even possible. Again, Mr. Santorum has yet to actually endorse Romney's candidacy at all. He has yet to publicly do so, despite suspending his own candidacy. But again, who Romney selects as a running mate is going to be vitally important. There's no question about that. And it's a difficult decision for him. Does he select a female running mate, a minority running mate? Does he select someone who's perhaps seen as more conservative than he is? That's a difficult decision, but it's a crucial one for the future of his candidacy, because right now it looks pretty bleak. No question about that. No matter what public opinion polls say, at the moment I would say the prospects are pretty bleak. Because the president no doubt will begin to tout his accomplishments and achievements in what have you. The reality is the fall campaign could come down to, I killed Osama bin Laden, and what have you done? And that's kind of tough. That's really kind of tough. I'm not suggesting we should all cast our ballots for the incumbent president, merely that's going to be a tough argument to counter. I ousted Muammar Gaddafi, and what have you accomplished? Well,
I'm not waging war on Muslims.
Yes, exactly. It's going to be tough to counter the president's arguments here. When you eliminate national security threats, and yes, foreign policy is the president's strong point here. You know, rightly or wrongly.
Whoever would have thought that?
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought that would be the president's strong point here? It's going to be a strong point that Mr. Romney's going to have to find a way to counter. He's going to have to find some effective way to counter that. Hopefully he won't be passing the question what have you many times too. He might very well be. And maybe getting a running mate with some foreign policy experience may be an asset. Someone, a member of Congress who, perhaps has been around a while. Someone who does have a lot of experience in diplomacy. That's like Mr. Gingrich, possibly. Or maybe a little more experience.
I don't know if it's a threat to Obama, especially if he runs third party and Obama runs on military.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge. His left, his base is not interested in that.
Yeah.
Killing U.S. citizens and stuff. That's really not cool.
What you mentioned about Mr. Paul being the only veteran in the race is interesting and silly.
And the draft dodger too.
Yes. Well, I appreciate all of your contribution. No question about that.
Well, thank you again very much.